Hello, my name is John Tetzlaff with Tetzlaff Yacht Sales, and we're doing our first big boating on Minnesota water shows today. And as guests today, we have Paul Kavitsko with the St. Croix Crossing Bridge Construction Project. We have Washington County Sheriff's Office Sergeant Tim Harris, who's in charge of the water, parks, and trails units. And we have Conservation Officer Scott Arnson. They're going to answer some questions and get some good information out there on boating for everyone. If you guys want to give a little background on yourselves, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Paul Kavitsko. I'm the bridge construction engineer for the St. Croix project, and I've been with MnDOT for a little over 30 years. I've been on the St. Croix project for about 2 years now in the design and the construction. And in my capacity, I manage the contract, make sure the plans and specifications are followed during construction, and manage our team of inspection and engineers that are on the project.
Okay, great.
My name is Sergeant Tim Harris, the Sheriff's Office here in Washington County. I'm in charge of the operations in the Water Parks and Trails unit. I've started in the unit this last September 2013, and I've been with the Sheriff's Office for just about 14 years.
Great.
I'm Scott Arnson, Conservation Officer with Minnesota. Recently as a police officer for 10 years, and came on with the DNR for the last couple of years and cover the Forest Lake area.
Super. I'm sure we'd have a lot of good stories coming out of you guys if we wanted to get into that. It'd be great. But we're going to answer ask some questions and get some great answers that I think the boaters out there are really going to be appreciative of. So the first question we have is, what watercraft must be licensed to be on water?
Generally, most watercraft, whether it's motorized, non-motorized, you need to have those licensed. Those will include motorboats, rowboats, sailboats, stand-up paddleboards, kayaks, canoes. The one exception is if your watercraft, non-motorized, is 10 feet or less. That's the only exception that you wouldn't need to license that watercraft.
So like inner tubes and mattresses and things like that?
They would not need to be, correct.
Okay, great. What are some of the PDF requirements needed on a watercraft?
Pretty much all boats. If you're operating on the water, you're going to have some level of, PFDs or personal flotation devices. That's also going to include your paddle boards, your kayaks, things of that nature. Anything over 16 feet, you're also going to need to have a Type 4, which is a throwable. A lot of times boats are already set up with some type of seat cushion that's allowable for that. One of the things you want to be cautious of is make sure that the PFD is fit for the people that are on the boat. There's everything that fits from our youth, the children, to somebody that might be a little older. But you still need to have one for each person that's on board. When you start getting into the PFDs, it is required for anybody under the age of 10 years old to have a PFD on when that vessel is underway. So they're required to have that on there.
And that would include if it's in a cabin cruiser and they're inside the cabin, they still have to have it on?
They still have to, yep, they would still have to have it if it's underway. It also has to be readily accessible as well. So
not hit under a seat or something like that? Hit under a seat
or jammed in a engine compartment or something along those lines.
Sure, great, okay. And when are navigation lights needed?
Navigational lights must be on from sunset to sunrise.
Okay.
And that's all bodies of water.
Okay. And no problems having them on all day?
Nope.
They can have them on whenever, so there's no penalty?
Correct.
Okay. What sound device is needed on a watercraft?
One of the safety inspections we do when we're out checking boats, especially if we come across a violation, is we always check for the sound devices to make sure that they have something on board. When you talk about vessels between the length of 16 feet to 26 feet, they have to have some type of audio device, whether it's a mechanical or a whistle that's at least audible to about a half mile. They have to have that available with them. Once you start getting into the bigger boats, 26 to 40 feet, you're going to start having to have the hand horn or the handheld horns or the electronic one that, and the distance to be able to hear it is going to have to extend up to almost a mile. And then when you get over that 40 foot, it's got to be that mechanical horn.
Okay, great. What are the acceptable noise levels on a watercraft? We hear these, cigarette boats that are, those are pretty loud, and the exhausts are different on some boats and.
You know, and I'll touch base with that again. That's one of those things where you start looking at vessels that have been built before 1982. There's different requirements for those versus ones that have been built after 1982. And then there's two types of measurements that are done. One is 50 feet away, that's 50 feet away from the boat. And also one that's checking about 4 feet away and 4 feet high off the water right behind the transom. With the boats that are built before 1982, you're looking at having a decibel of 86 is allowed, and 84 at the 50-foot range. You're able to check. And then when you're looking at boats or watercraft that are built after 1982, you're going to have the allowable range is 82 decibels at that 50-foot test and 84 at the transom test. There is some issues with the different regulations that Minnesota has with Wisconsin. Ours being a little bit more restrictive than Wisconsin's. We're obviously being on the water, we're only required to be able to enforce our laws versus the one that's in Minnesota. So.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. What type of law enforcement may be seen out on the St. Croix River? I know when we're out there and folks are out there, there's a lot of different agencies that are out there. It seems.
Since it's a border water with Minnesota and Wisconsin, and also the St. Croix is under federal jurisdiction also. So what you'll see out there is the Minnesota DNR, Wisconsin DNR, Washington County Sheriff's Office, St. Croix County Sheriff's Office, as well as the National Park Service and the Coast Guard.
And they all have the same same duty. They can all enforce the same laws.
Yep.
Okay. How old do you have to be to operate a watercraft? That's a big question there.
Yeah, you get into, you start looking at the horsepower of the engines. Anything 25 horsepower or under, 12 years of age, they're allowed to authorize to operate that without any issues. Once it gets over that 25 horsepower, you're required to have somebody that's at least 21 years of age or older in the vessel with them within control of that engine. Anything from 12 to 17 years of age, they're authorized to operate that vessel without having that person 21 years old of age, as long as they've gone through the the vessel operating course. And that's, I believe, provided through the Minnesota DNR. You can access it through their website. It's fairly easy training, get that certification done.
Sure.
If they don't have that, and it's over that 25 horsepower, they're required to have somebody with 21 years of age or older with them on that vessel. So.
Okay. All right.
And then anything 75 horsepower or more, that 12-year-old's not going to be able to authorize it or use that, even if they do have somebody in that boat with them. So.
And they'd have to be how old then to operate the bigger?
They got to be over between 12 and 12 and 17 years of age. They can operate it with that operator's course.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. What is the alcohol concentration for impaired motorboat operation?
That's going to be the same as a motor vehicle. It's going to be 0.08.
Okay.
And pretty much the same laws that do apply to a motor vehicle will apply to boating also.
Will they lose their driving, anything with their driving?
They very well could, lose their driving privileges. It could even affect their insurance.
Okay. What are the rules regarding water skiing, tubing, and wakeboarding? Boy, we see a lot of that getting kind of close to the big boats and shorelines. And
Yeah, absolutely. The tow ropes themselves can't exceed 150 feet. You know, that's obviously going to prevent things from getting knocked into or crossing into other vessels' traffic. It's also prohibited 1 hour after sunset to sunrise the following day as well. They're not allowed to do any of that tubing or the skiing with that. And then they also have to have a PFD that must be worn when they're being towed or carried by another watercraft.
okay, great.
Including with it, I'm sorry, is that they have to have somebody, a spotter, so to speak, on board, be able to watch that to make sure there's no, emergency that's taking place with that tuber, or they have to have a mirror that allows them a broad spectrum of view to be able to see in the back. Then they wouldn't have to have that spotter with them.
So just one person with a nice mirror that you can see.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. What are the laws dealing with personal watercraft, PWCs?
I can touch base with that. The same rules apply as far as the certificate to be able to authorize to use that water vessel. So the 12-year-old, the 17-year-old have to have that operator certificate in order to be able to utilize those PWCs for the personal watercraft. They're also known as like ski-doos or jet skis. You're also going to have, you know, you can't go within 150 feet of non-motorized vehicles and dive platforms and things of that nature. A lot of times we'll see jet skis out want to jump the wakes of other boats and they get too close, and that obviously creates a danger not only for the boat that they're jumping the wake on, but also the person that's operating that personal watercraft or the PWC. Law does restrict them from operating in a negligent manner that could risk life or damage to property. So each jet ski or each personal watercraft that's being operated has to have those guidelines listed within view of the operator nearest to, usually I've seen them right around where the keys to access or to start the engine are at. They can't operate, or they're only allowed to operate from 9:30 in the morning till sunset, and obviously because there's no navigational lights that are typically on those, it would cause some problems with them cruising around at night. So they have to also have a type 1, 2, 3, or 5 personal flotation device being worn while they're operating that.
Now, if they were to have their personal watercraft that didn't have the lights and they put their own lights on there, would they be able to use them at night?
No, not on the
Okay.
personal watercraft, no.
Yep, okay. What watercraft is required to have a fire extinguisher?
Pretty much any watercraft that has an enclosed fuel cell. If you just had generally if you had just a regular outboard motor on it with an open fuel cell, you wouldn't need a fire extinguisher. But if that fuel cell was enclosed in any way that vapor could be trapped, you would now need a fire extinguisher. Depending on the length of the boat, you may need multiple fire extinguishers as well.
Okay, that's in addition to the suppression system that would come with the boat?
That would be included as one of the extinguishers.
Okay, okay. What are the most common calls received by the Water Patrol?
I know the ones that we respond to on a frequent basis is usually some type of motor distress, whether it's a boat breaking down, engine problems. We also receive a lot of phone calls on the no wake violations. There's multiple spots throughout the St. Croix River where there's restricted with a no wake, and with talking about no wake it's just enough to boat speed to allow for steerage of that vessel. Where they start creating that wake, it's obviously causing issues with whether it's the environment or with beach or all those other areas where they have specific designation for no wakes. The other ones we deal with, we hear quite a bit is the noise violations, with boaters. Obviously, you're talking about running the scar bullets and, with those big pipes and causing a lot of noise and disturbance on the St. Croix River, and we get a lot of phone calls with that. And then the other things that we always run into is that PWC, those personal watercraft violations. People get out, maybe don't get a lot of experience and working and utilizing those, and they go out and want to play around, and they take a lot of chance and risk a lot of their boaters out there, like I was saying before, jumping wakes too close or operating in a swim area where they're not supposed to be. So those are some of the main calls we typically deal with out.
Great, okay. And what are the most common, what are the most common violations seen on a safety inspection of the boat?
A lot of the stuff that we see on a safety inspection, definitely going to be your PFD violations. Whether they don't have enough PFDs or the life jackets that they do have on board aren't the right size for those people, whether it's an adult PFD or a child PFD. Type 4 throwables, those are the other common ones that we don't see a lot on boats that become a violation. Horns, a lot of them need horns. Fire extinguishers, need to make sure that they're charged up, they're not empty. It's kind of any other violations? Or?
Some of the ones I'll see too is that overweight capacity, where there are 6 persons and they got 8 or 10, where you can clearly see it's gonna be an issue with them, especially get into some of those big wakes that can happen out there. We'll see that if we do see a PFD violation or we see a no wake, we'll end their voyage and we'll make sure we get those people to, a safe location and make sure that they're, safe before they start their voyage back in, whether it's, stopping to get another PFD or making sure they go onto another vessel. Typically, those will result in citations if we do see stuff like that, just because of the nature of the safety violations there, so.
And if they're in the boat and the boat's moving and their arms or legs are over the sides, what's the rules on that?
Yeah, the gunnel rating or the transom rating, that's another one we'll see quite often where the boat is underway, they're not anchored, they're going down the waterway and they're deciding to sit on this edge of the boat, put their hand in the water or what have you. Well, it typically becomes a safety concern and it is a violation. It's something we address with quite often on the St. Croix too.
So you must be inside the actual boat itself. You can't have limbs over anywhere or on the swim platform.
Yeah, anytime that boat is underway,
Yeah.
you can't be on the bow of it or the transom of it or on the side of it. You have to be inside.
Perfect. Okay, who is responsible for law enforcement on the Hudson Islands and beaches north of Stillwater?
The Hudson Islands are going to fall within the Hudson Police Department's jurisdiction or the St. Croix County Sheriff's Office. We'll assist them quite often, especially if they don't have a law enforcement presence on the water. It sometimes takes a while for them to get somebody out there on the water, and if we already have a boat available, we'll go out and assist that law enforcement agency, whether it's even getting the law enforcement agency with that jurisdiction and giving them a ride out to the island to assist with any type of calls. When you start getting to the beach area to the north, assume you're talking like the boom site area stuff.
Yeah.
So the St. Croix River kind of is divided almost in half up there where the Minnesota and Wisconsin borders are. Most of that beach area does fall within the Wisconsin jurisdiction, but once again, that's another area that we're able to help out with.
Sure.
Especially if we're requested by their law enforcement agency to assist. The St. Croix River does have concurrent jurisdiction, so we're able to enforce laws from the waterway to the other end of the waterway, no matter where it falls within, whether it's in the St. Croix County side or the Washington County side. We're still able to enforce those laws because of that concurrent jurisdiction.
Okay. Okay, so what are these agencies responsible for in these areas? And I think we kind of went over some of this before, but like underage drinking, do you see a lot of disturbing the peace, medical emergencies in these areas?
For the most part, you get into some of the bigger events, you get around 4th of July, I know past years and Lumberjack Days, where you start developing a lot of people in a close area, and anytime you start dealing with more alcohol involved, those type of calls increase, everything from underage drinking to disorderly conducts taking place. And that's where we'll typically help out, especially if it is in the Wisconsin side or if it's outside of our jurisdiction, we're requested to help out. But typically we try to stay within our own patrol area, but we'll see a variety of different things, everything from stolen, watercraft that we've been covered on the St. Croix River, to dealing with DW, or boating while under the influence too. So.
Okay. And the consequences to some of these actions are basically the same if they were driving their car and had the same situation. They're going to get arrested.
Yep.
Yep, same thing.
Okay, I think that's it for the officers. Now we have some questions for Paul in the bridge. Boy, that's another hot subject. That's a good one. So, what will the boaters see out there as they go through the channel?
Okay, John, in 2014, I see much the same that we saw in 2013, where we had cofferdams and constructing the piers. This year there'll be a lot of barge activity around each of the 5 piers that are in the river, and there'll be concrete that'll be transported via barges to all of the piers at various times. As we move upward, there'll be 2 pier columns at each pier location, and eventually connected, and then precast segments will be erected from those piers. Also, if the boaters would look on the Minnesota approach side, you see the piers are rising up, as well as bridge construction that'll be happening, the false work, which would support cast-in-place concrete, and also some precast concrete elements that will be constructed. And also along the Wisconsin bluff up, would be constructing a pier and an abutment up along the Wisconsin bluff, and much the same activities with some pile driving, some concrete placement and construction of the superstructure.
Okay. And why does there need to be a designated channel?
The designated channel is really for the safety of the boaters. And there's a lot of construction activity with large vessels, large barges with supporting cranes and a lot of heavy materials and equipment. And no matter the size of the vessel that a boater might be using, it's pretty small in comparison to some of those barges that are out there. And so the designated channel will keep the boaters safe. It provides a way for the workmen to be working without having to be concerned about boaters that are out and about in the work zone.
Sure. Will the channel move this year? Last year it stayed in the same spot.
It's likely to stay in the same spot this year in 2014. The work will be mostly confined to the piers themselves, and with some segment erection that may happen. I don't anticipate the channel will move in 2014, although it is possible. If it does move, it will be clearly marked. However, that will not be the case in 2015. In 2015, because we'll be erecting segments overhead over the designated channels, it will have to move. But as far as 2014, it most likely will stay in the same spot. And throughout the course of the summer, we will always be maintaining a minimum of a 300-foot channel. So that's a requirement of the Coast Guard, and so that will be maintained at all times.
Okay. And it will remain for the entire project?
It will remain for the entire project. And the project is slated for completion at the end of 2016, so we'd anticipate the designated channel to be in use through that time.
And I know this is the last question, but I'll tie it in here. A lot of people want to know, is there going to be a no-wake zone after the bridge is done?
There will not be a no-wake zone under and around and through the bridge for the bridge itself. Obviously, there are times when there's no-wake zones because of the elevation of the water and so forth, but there will be no restrictions of the channel and no wake restrictions once the bridge is completed.
Okay. And why is the no wake needed?
The no wake is really for the safety of the boaters as well as the safety of the workers. And I mentioned before that as far as the boaters themselves, oftentimes in relatively small vessels compared to the large tugboats, the large barges, and the large equipment that's out there working. And so if they are able to remain in a safe location where, for one, the workers know where they are, it's not likely that there will be a collision. Oftentimes, if a boater is not looking in the direction where a tugboat or a barge may be coming, it could be a cause for a conflict. And as far as the safety of the workers, if there is a wake that comes from a passing boat, you can imagine these barges are quite large, but there's a big crane with a large boom on it, and a little bit of movement down at the bottom with a 200-foot boom can be quite a bit of movement. And oftentimes the crane is carrying some type of a load, whether it be rebar or a bucket of concrete or a large segment that we're going to be erecting, and a little bit of movement down at the base of the crane can translate into a large movement up above.
Okay. And how can they see what's going on with the project?
Well, one of the best ways, if you're not on the river and you want a view from home, is MnDOT has a website for the St. Croix Crossing project. And the website has a lot of photos, it has live video links that will show what's happening even on a real-time basis. So that's one real good way that boaters can stay apprised of what is going on. We also have an email, weekly email that goes out, and to get on that mailing list, you can again get on the MnDOT website and sign up for that weekly newsletter email that goes out telling about the status of the project, where things are happening, and if there are any additional restrictions. And we would even be able to put things like, is the channel expected to move at a certain time?
That's great news. Okay. What about people on land? Are they gonna have some problems getting their boats into the river?
There shouldn't be any problem traversing through the project, through the approach roadway, which is being constructed. Certainly, there's a lot of construction going to be going on yet in 2014, both on Highway 36 and on Highway 95. But throughout, we will always maintain at least one lane of traffic on those roadways. Access will be maintained to the nearest marina, which is Sunnyside Marina, and as well access will be maintained then through the project and to other marinas that are nearby. So no, we don't expect that there will be any delays, any big problems for people getting to their marina of choice.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions we have of you gentlemen right now. We appreciate it. And this is, like I said, this is the first show, and I think it's going to be a great one. Can't get any better with you guys. Thank you very much.
Also, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, John.
I'd also like to mention that we lost a couple boating professionals in the past 12 months. Gary Poffenberger, who was owner of the Wabasha Marina, passed away last November. Gary was a great guy, and along with his wife, they really took care of the marina down there, and they had some great plans. The marina will carry on, unfortunately, with a sad note there. Also, Terry Plan, Hastings Marina in Hastings, he passed away January 24th, and again, Terry was a great guy. The marina down there is great. His brother Jim is still down there taking care of business. So just a couple of sad notes, and keep them in your prayers. Thank you.